I am a growth marketing manager at ClassPass, and I focus primarily on paid acquisition, a few different channels, but mostly on Facebook and Instagram. We've worked with Social Native in a few ways. Our brand team worked with Social Native in terms of just getting a lot of user-generated content. We were kind of behind the game and hadn't really entered that space too much, and so that was great for us. We rolled that out last summer, and it actually outperformed against the other assets that we had. So that was super exciting. And then we used it in more of a direct response format where we actually did video content only. We wanted more video assets because our team is still trying to figure out how we can best utilize video and kind of find our voice there. And so we actually had the content creators put our link in their bio, which was helpful to us because we wanted the branding and we wanted to enter that space with users and kind of start the conversation, but we also wanted, as we care so much about attribution and measurement, to be able to have a good sense of if this is also okay eventually getting people to the website or kind of actually moving the needle. And we saw that by doing that, we definitely saw the impact. So that was super helpful for us. We also did a test where we tested audio for Instagram stories. We're, again, as we're entering the video space and kind of finding our way with Instagram stories, we wanted to make sure that we knew what we were doing. And so we did this great test where we tested sound off with no volume, no audio. Then we did music, like ambient kind of music sounds, and then we did voice and a voiceover. And we found that both the voiceover and the audio sound outperformed when we just had no sound. So that was a good learning for us as well, to make sure that we always include audio into our Instagram stories. So one of the things we've learned is that it's so specific to the brand and that everyone should be testing it on their own. We have kind of a network of other teams at other companies that we check in with, like, okay, this worked for us, what works for you guys? And we find that a lot of times it's different. So while it's really helpful to have advice from someone else and kind of have a place to start, it doesn't always mean that it's gonna be the same result. So it's so important for each brand to test what's gonna work for them. What we've learned for us, which is interesting right now, is that we are still able sometimes to have static images outperform our video, just because sometimes the video has a higher upfront cost. So we're trying to make our video, we're still new in that space, outperform the static because that's where the users are these days. So we're really trying to make sure that we can increase our video performance in order to get that more performant and kind of enter that conversation. Another thing that we've learned is just, we do a lot of messaging testing to see what variety or what value props are resonating with users, and for us, we've found that variety for our product of ClassPass, of the different classes that you can attend, is one of the biggest value props. We've also have an evergreen promo, so we always have a free trial, and we find that incorporating that into the messaging and letting the trial be the marketing and speak for the product as opposed to just the ad is really helpful for us. So we try to encourage people to actually get out there and try it, and that's been really performant on Facebook. We'll do so many different tests, and sometimes video wins and sometimes static wins, and we find that it's just pretty case by case. A recent example actually was when we had a subtle animation. So we did this promotion with Sweetgreen actually, where we were giving out a Sweetgreen gift card in addition to signing up for your free trial for ClassPass. And we had a static image of that portraying that trial and the salad, as well as one that was animated with just like a blinking last call. And we found that the animation lost because it wasn't really changing that much about the creative. We weren't really utilizing the fact that we were running video and telling a story or doing something unique. It was just a subtle animation. But we found that animation drove up the CPM, so the static image outperformed. So that was an interesting learning for us, that if we're gonna do video, we need to do it right, and we need to tell a story. It's not just like, oh, this is a blinking light, and that's gonna move the needle. In-house creative team, which is so great that we were able to work with them, and we do running shoots throughout the year where we'll kind of compile what we want and what we want to work with, and we'll try to get that. In terms of vertical video, we make sure that when we are capturing, we can have it for any platform. So we make sure if we're shooting someone on a bike, that we have a lot of padding on the outsides of that so that we can crop it for vertical or use it for horizontal if we're running on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So we definitely try to keep a good variety of what we do shoot and stuff that can be repurposed for both vertical and horizontal. We've also worked with Social Native on getting some user-generated content that we can kind of have in our back pocket if we need to use. We found that when we launch in new markets across the United States, that it's been helpful to use that content. It's a little bit more relatable, and users will see authentic story and then kind of figure out, oh, what's ClassPass? So we found that that was really helpful to leverage when we have all these different vertical video assets that we have from Social Native to leverage in new markets. Talked a lot about testing and how our company does a lot of A/B testing in every facet of our marketing channels. So we always go in knowing that we want to make sure that we're not biased in terms of what we want to use as our direction. We sometimes will have a creative that we think is better or shows our story that we like personally, but then when we test another variant against it, that one will actually outperform. And we're so focused on bringing down our CPAs that it just really matters what's going to perform better. So we always test to make sure that the ones that we're running with are actually the ones that are going to drive the lowest CPAs, as opposed to what we just think we like by looking at it. And the other reason that we always test too is just to continually learn what resonates with users, or any little things like what kind of CTA button will work, or what types of audiences will work, what optimization levers. So we're always like twofold. One is to make sure that we're actually running the assets that are going to bring us the cheapest CPAs, and then secondary, just to continually learn what works for us. So I talked a lot about that, and as well also just some of the other channels that we've tested. So we've done a lot of podcast advertising, which has been great for us in terms of having a long period of time that you have a user engaged with a host that they trust. And even though it's a little bit, it's not a digital channel, we're able to attribute that by using vanity URLs, and by we also use a post-checkout survey. So once users have signed up on our site, we'll have a survey that pops up and asks how they heard about us. So between both the vanities and then the survey, we're able to tell how people find us and use that to kind of triangulate around if our ad spend was worth it on the podcast channel. We talked also about just the importance of video and the importance of creative as well. So in this day and age, Facebook is so smart, and the Facebook optimizations are so smart when you give it an event, such for us as a conversion, to optimize on, that the audiences that you're targeting or the ad formats and all of that you're using are not as important as the actual content that you're running, where every brand now has the same levers. Anyone can place a pixel and optimize on it. So the one differentiator that we do have is what creative we're actually running. So just how important that is, and how we're still figuring out, especially with the advent of video, how to best utilize that. It's a similar key learning that I think a lot of people have, but I arrive at mine differently, which is the importance of creative. We've seen that on Facebook, again, as I mentioned, if you optimize towards a conversion, that's going to ultimately be what helps you perform. And the only factor that each brand can control is what they're putting within that ad and the creative itself. So I think that's probably one of my biggest takeaways, is the importance of creative and testing. The other one would just be figuring out how to test. It's overwhelming. There's so many things to test. You can test creative, you can test audiences, optimization levers, placements, time of day. And so I think the other learning that I would have is just to find a spot and start with it, and then make a list of all the things you want to do, but take them off one by one. It's hard to test for everything at once because you won't know what moved the needle. So it's good to just start with one variable and go through the list. Picking one specific metric that you're going to look at for your measure of success, because sometimes we'll see that the click-through rate is really high, but that the CPA is bad. And if what we are looking at is CPA, then we don't really care what this CTR is. Or if it's the opposite and we're trying to drive awareness and traffic, then we care what the CPM and the CTR is, and we don't necessarily care about the CPA. So I think picking one metric to look at, kind of having a list to go through, and then these days just knowing the importance of what your creative and what your content is. It's been great. I have not been to too many of these conferences, and I'm so excited to be here. I have met so many people that are do similar things than me or different, and I've learned a lot from them. It's always refreshing to just kind of get out of your own bubble and hear what else is going on and what other people are doing, and that we're all kind of fighting the same fights and learning the same things. So it's really refreshing to just be here and meeting people and learning. All the different panelists have been pretty unique and different stories, which has been great. So it's just been awesome. It's so engaging. It's such a great day. As a millennial, I predict that taking a stance as a brand and in your content is going to be more and more important, and being just ready to get into that conversation and have a voice, have a stance, whatever it may be, and portray that in your content, both being authentic but also just being true to your brand is going to be more and more important. And I think people are pretty critical, and I think that consumers, especially these days, the rising consumers, care so much more about the brand and who the brand is, what they stand for, what they believe in, what they're doing to make the world a better place is becoming more and more important. It doesn't matter what the brand is, if it's a beverage company or a clothing company, that as long as that story is true and has its own voice, I think that is going to be important more than ever.